Uh, Good morning, good afternoon to everyone who joined the session. Thank you so much for your time. I think we started at the right time. Let's give maybe a minute from now. I think there are a couple of people joining in. Let's take a minimum 30 seconds now to get started again. Thanks for you guys again. Let's get started shortly. All right, so let's begin our session. I think I see good numbers of people joining. I think let's people join and let's keep on the time. So thanks again. Thanks for the great session you guys joined. My name is Vino. I'm going to be the facilitator for the session. In the next 30 minutes, we will be sharing our experience we learned in the last 21 years. And today we have the great webinar planned titled Accelerate Your Oracle EBS R12.2 Upgrade using ChainSys Data Platform. This is need of an hour, meaning Oracle announced the end of premier support for its R12.1 release by December 2021. And grouping that, let's have this more interactive session. What I mean is, feel free to type in your questions in the chat options. We'll be more than happy to answer all your questions during the Q&A sessions. Before I bring in our panel members, I like to take a minute or two to share about ChainSys at the high level. ChainSys offers an end-to-end data management solutions, solving all data management related challenges in the last couple of years. Headquartered in Lansing, Michigan, and other offices across the globe, with Chennai, India being the APAC headquarter. With over 1,000 plus professionals right now supporting our customers both on-site and offshore model, with our experts, we have a unique process in play that which plays a major and key roles in all our projects we are handling right now. Our solutions are being built with the adapters and ready to use templates, and you can see that with well over 3,000 templates uh, we have here today in supporting all the major enterprise applications with our unique products. You can see the product by name, Data Zap, Data Zen, and Data Zens. I'll give you a high level of what does it. It talks about Data Zap is more on the data movement, includes migration, integration, reconciliation, archival, and purging, etc. So this archival and purging could be one of the topic which we'll be covering this today. Data Zen supports the data quality, governance, and workflow process. And Zen's the last, but not the least, it has a lot of features, including the analytical side of it, machine learning, artificial intelligence, more or less a supporting decision-making process, right, including data catalog and IoT levels. So with our unique features, we are supporting over the 250 plus customers at multiple levels, enterprise customers, small and mid-sized companies. And there are a very niche requirement on the data management side. We help them exclusively on their needs on the data side. All our products are certified. We certify ourselves, and we are a platinum partners for Oracle, SAP partner, Microsoft partner, Salesforce ISV partner, and of course there are a lot of technologies we adopt these days, which is latest, and we make sure we give the right solutions at the right time with the right customers who are need data challenges. What we bring here. So this gives a high level about what we are, and we'll take deep dive when it comes on. So let me introduce my panel members, not to take much time here. So here are the two gentlemen on today's session, Sid Azar and Austin Davis. They both carry a vast experience in the data management world. Sid is one of the key person who involved in the upgrade initiatives in the last couple of years, and one of the recent project what he is undertaken was completely on the upgrade initiatives, which is going pretty successfully. And of course, Austin, who is our product expert, who is with ChainSys for more than 13 years, and he's delivered a wonderful experience supporting the customers using our product experience. Welcome you guys for the as a panel member. I'm pleased to be joining along with you guys in this session. And said we'll take this pretty quickly and move forward. Can I introduce and can you introduce yourself, and then we'll take this forward, Sid?
Absolutely. Thank you, Vinu. I appreciate that kind introduction. Hope my audio is good on your end.
Yeah, go ahead, Sid. It is really good. Thank you.
Wonderful. So folks, first I'd like to give you a personal extension, a warm welcome to this webinar. I think you're going to enjoy it. It's a very hot topic these days, especially with everything going on. And I know for Oracle EBS users, this is something which is very near and dear. So I think without much ado, since time is of essence here, we want to be respectful of your time. Let's get started. So the agenda we'll be covering in today's session, basically we'll be talking about the Oracle roadmap as Oracle has laid out its roadmap for its Oracle EBS. And then we're going to talk about the ChainSys Smart approach, how to get to R12.2 with ease. And by that, I mean a methodology that's in place that really makes this process streamlined and makes it easy for you, seamless with a lot of built-in features, which facilitates and promotes an easy migration path. And then, we'll leave about 5 minutes toward then for a Q&A session. I'm sure we'll get a lot of good questions. This is just a very, very hot topic. By the way, before we get started, please feel free to put your questions in the webinar panel section there, and we'll be able to pick it up, and Vino's going to run through, and we'll be glad to answer. So let's look at the EBS roadmap that's Oracle's published. This is extremely interesting. If you're an EBS customer, and I work with a lot of enterprise clients, December 2021 is the magical date when release 12.1 basically goes off premier support. And that's a daunting thing to, take in all at one time and saying, what am I going to do with my Oracle EBS instance? Who's going to support me? How will I manage? Well, not to worry, because Oracle also realizes the importance of continuity in Oracle EBS, and they have announced extension on 12.2 through Premier support at least through 2031. And I just kind of chuckled to myself when I saw this when Oracle first released it. They say at least 2031. That's kind of an interesting thing because I just have a feeling, my gut tells me that this might even get extended a little bit beyond that, which is great for us in our EBS worlds because frankly, there's a lot of enterprises that run on a very stable environment and people love Oracle EBS. So we just wanted to continue and we can help you with this journey. I just wanted to add something here, a little tidbit on Oracle EBS on release 12.2. Obviously, Oracle's making it very lucrative for folks to stay here and go to the new release. One of the things they're giving is Oracle Enterprise Command Centers, which is going to be free of charge from what I understand. If you're an Oracle EBS Enterprise client, you get the Enterprise Command Centers free of charge. And this gives you some really cool operational data. So from a reporting perspective, instead of you having to go and get custom reports from IT, they have to build data perhaps is reliable or questionable. But with the command centers being in place, you can on the fly start building your own operational reporting data. And it's a very cool functionality. I'm sure our attendees on this session probably have had the opportunity to see it. If not, please do look it up. It's interesting and very helpful, I feel, to business. So moving on, one of the things we want to look at, of course, in any software upgrade, specifically now talking about going from, let's say, a 12.1.3 environment to a 12.2.8, 9, 7, wherever you want to decide to go to, the very first thing you got to do, you basically got to do an assessment on where we are today in our environment. So basically, look at the current environment, look at the fact, how will my IT operations be affected? How will my Oracle apps be impacted if I go from my current release into the new release, which gives me a lot more functionality, but I got to look at the impact analysis. And that's where, we can help you. Another great step that we have inserted into this upgrade path, which typically is an optional step, but we feel, and we'll show you the value it brings to you, is the step of remediation in terms of data archival, purging, quality, helping you decide whether you want to stay on-prem, you want to move to the cloud, things of that nature. We'll talk specifically about that. Then number 3, we'll talk specifically in terms of upgrade, what the requirements are. And then the thing that's, I tell you this I say it with all sincerity, this is the thing that keeps people up at night, and that's your Chemly migration. So all your customizations, that's where people dread. The IT teams think, hey, can I upgrade, take my business into the next release and still be able to give them the same functionality they got very comfortable to use in the current environment. And then very important, nothing is complete till you actually validate and test. So that's an important aspect that has to be part of every upgrade. So having said that, 5 key steps designed here: assessment, remediation, upgrade, chemly assessment, and then migration, and then finally the core step of validation. So let's go back and now start looking basically at each section. I know this is a lot of information, so I'll try to, at a high level, brush through quickly, and then we'll take your questions at the end of the session. Most folks who've been, let's say you're on 12.1.3, and you've been there for the last 8+ years, you've probably got volumes and volumes of data just sitting there. Some of it is perhaps never utilized, some of it is underutilized, some of it you might have been keeping for statutory requirements, but now even those statutory requirements perhaps are over. So you've got to look at the data, especially as you think about, hey, I may not be staying on prem, I may be thinking about moving to the cloud, and then what is the impact of keeping all this old data? How is it going to impact my cost? I got to look at that. So hence, data assessment from a volume perspective, what you want to take with you, what you want to leave behind, perhaps archive. We'll talk specifically about that. And then infrastructure planning is a key area. You've got to look at your current hardware and see where the future path is for your company, because your business might be looking at 3 acquisitions. Maybe it's not pinpointed right now that it's going to be a $2 billion acquisition here and 3 billion there, but perhaps that is in your path for growth. And then inherently, there'll be growth coming from just business expansion, even without the acquisition. You've got to look at in a deep dive fashion to see where this path is and how can you support business. Because if at the end of the day, you go to a new release and then they bring a new acquisition on board and you're not able to take care of that in terms of be able to support business with all the cool functionalities that you built over the years that business has gotten used to, then from an IT perspective, it's a hard thing to swallow. So that's where we can help. And of course, chemleys, your customization sitting in your current environment, we got to look at the utilization of these. We found very often that 25, 30%, sometimes as high as that, perhaps even higher, the customizations are sitting there and no one's used them. So do we want to take these customizations? Perhaps not. We got to look at that. So we can do an impact analysis on this in terms of the upgrade, in terms of structural differences between the current version and the new version, like tables, columns are changing now. So what would be the impact on my chemleys? And then, setup object assessment is another cool thing. We'll talk about it as we go through this. Perhaps not so much from a perspective of an upgrade, but even a standalone thing. It's a key to your success. So moving on, what I want to show you now, we took the liberty of recording a very small demo to talk about the platform, but in view of the limited time we have here today, I'm going to fast forward through that a little bit quick. So let me play it for you. And basically in this first part, through our smart data platform, we're going to look at the Chemly object dashboards. So basically this gives you a full view with a drill down capability of each object. So you could be looking at table levels, looking at forms, and then get an entire synopsis of the object. In addition, the tool will also allow you to compare table structures, column structures, and then give you the impact analysis in terms of how this particular customization would perhaps be impacted when you take it to the new release. If you take it as is, this functionality may not work. And then, come that Monday morning, go live, business wants to do a shipping and they're screaming at IT because basically it just doesn't work. So how do you handle something like that? It's good to have a complete view and an assessment and then a plan to release this into the next release. So that is extremely important. And this is just a very top level brush onto what the tool does. I'd be more than happy, all of us here on this call, Vinu, myself, and Austin, please do reach out to us. You'll have our contact information toward then. We'll be able to set up one-on-one demo sessions and talk a little bit more in details. But for now, just to keep this brief, let me just run through, and you can see some pretty cool dashboards giving you complete visibility. Now, the next thing I want to talk about is a little bit about, the data volumes you've got. So you've got volumes and volumes of data sitting there. Let's basically look at some of the archival and purging dashboards that our tool can give you. So what we can offer you here, either, of course, there's a need for purging that we have already identified working with business. We can give you an overview, module by module, transaction by transaction, give you a view and a process for approving the data that needs to be purged. So business gets involved, they look at it, they approve it, multi-layer approval with a workflow. They tell IT, okay, it's good to purge, data is purged, but then data is also archived for historical reasons. Now in Oracle EBS, if you wanted to access that data, we give you screens to view the data as needed. So this is very powerful functionality. Unused data can be purged from production, can be archived for easy access. And this comes in handy when you're talking about paying a lot of money for keeping the data. This is very important, for example, in GL, which, as you know, is very heavy, and there's a lot of information sitting there. So let me move to the next section, and we'll talk a little bit more detail in terms of the remediation steps. So we looked at the little demo on our Chemlease. We talked about the archive and purge. Let me ask my good friend Austin, because I know recently he's been working with a lot of enterprise clients. Austin, can you share some input regarding archival and purging requirements that you're seeing coming in from enterprise clients, please?
Sure, absolutely. And thanks for having me on this webinar. When you had mentioned that you were doing this, and, I wanted to share what we were seeing in the industry. It was pretty exciting. I know Sid said, there's things that keep you awake at night, Chemlease and things like that, but I'd like to give some thought to the audience that there's an area that we can certainly help you. Let me just kind of think about, what is the archive component to all of that? Earlier Sid mentioned the whole expansion and acquisition growth for many of the companies, how they're going to be doing that. One of the most common use cases for archive is explicitly in this. You've got very old legacy systems, things that need to be sunset, or you may have business processes which are flowing through multiple legacy ERP systems or custom built applications dating back to the 90s. We see that all the time. The .NET systems, Java systems, those kinds of things. So we need to consider what we can do to reduce cost as we go forward. And in the archival lens, we can think about reducing these instances and their hold on the IT infrastructure teams. That's one. The other aspect is actually getting that data. So it's like a double dipping. Not only we can get rid of the systems physically and the infrastructure and resources that they consume, and the risk obviously tied into that, but the value of the data that's in those systems, bringing that into your either a data archive or your enterprise data warehouse or into your modern ERP. So all three are fine, but an assessment on our end can even tell you what is inside that data. So for example, we worked with a client and they wanted to know, they had I think 5,000 or 6,000 different databases of applications that have been acquired over a number of 15, 20 years. They didn't even know from a privacy perspective what the data was that they had in their systems. So we were able to share that information, and along with that, what are the master data, what is their transactional data. So that ended up being very helpful because from an archive perspective, we could quickly figure out where to put this data. Some of it goes into ERP, some of it goes into enterprise data warehouse, some of it goes into, essentially a cold archive sitting in storage. So all of these decision points, you need data, right? We all talk about wanting to be data driven. So our solution can help make that happen. One more thing I just wanted to Sid, if I can take another minute. When you think about how you can gain value out of this, right? One is the database licensing. Maybe you've got some old stuff out there you need to keep paying for it. That can, be eliminated or gotten rid of. I think the single most important thing that I think that we can do is when you are getting rid of old processes and taking advantage of the new applications, the modern applications. So that streamlines your workforce into what they're doing, and at the same time, you're not resigned to using this very old, antiquated system. So it's driving using the digital transformation journey, but driving towards being data driven. I know I threw a lot of buzzwords in there, Sid. So back to you, Sid.
Hey, I appreciate it, Austin. And I think that's very valuable. And large enterprises, of course, they're very concerned about these type of things. And thank you for sharing that information. So moving on, let's talk a little bit about data quality. One of the key aspects also, you could perhaps have a lot of data that may be redundant, maybe a lot of duplication or errors in the data, maybe some data needs enhancements, the need for harmonization, consolidation, etc., across different domains. So you may be looking at customers, you may be looking at suppliers, items, bombs, things of that nature. So we do have within our platform the capability to help you methodologically move this and clean through basically a process, clean this data, and then put a governance mechanism in place. When I talk about a governance mechanism, it's extremely important because without that, things will just get dirty again. So this is important. We got to look at that closely. Another key area is in terms of infrastructure. Do you want to stay on-prem? Do you want to just buy the infra? Or do you want to go on a SaaS license? What is the best thing in your environment? We got to look at those things. And then a lot of times, Chemleys in the new releases, what 6 or 8 years ago was a customization, now perhaps is available as standard functionality in the new Oracle 12.2 release. And if that's the case, we'll help you assess that and move that as standard functionality. And lastly, best practices, we're talking about a lot of best practices, even at a functional level in terms of process recommendation, enterprise command centers, usage, and things of that nature. So this is important. We go through this step by step and we make sure you're covered. So moving on, the next aspect is looking at the option to stay on-prem, or are you going to migrate out to, in the steps toward digitization, are you going to go to the cloud? And if that's the case, Oracle is offering some wonderful deals for its customers to bring them on OCI. I mean, you see some of them listed on the right, reduction in CapEx and basically recovery time objectives and things of that nature. But I mean, they're really sweetening the pot. So if you haven't yet talked to them and you're thinking about the cloud and you're talking to Azure, you're talking to AWS folks, do talk to Oracle because Oracle's got some wonderful deals. And one of the key areas here where we can help you, we can basically help you to see whether you want to stay and get infrastructure as a service or get infrastructure and database as a service, what the pros and cons are, especially in terms of support from these large vendors. So let's keep moving. I know we're a little short on time, but I want to be respectful. So I'll quickly go through and then we'll reserve about 5 minutes. I hope you can give us a few extra minutes toward the end for Q&A. So the process goes something like this. Basically, our team comes in, database folks, functional folks, they're all involved as one team. We go through, the database folks go and upgrade the databases. The next thing is they upgrade to release 12.2, followed by enablement of online patching, and then they're basically from an application perspective updating to the latest code. Now this last part, what's written here as point E, this is also an area where we can help you. For example, I mean, this is an example I can give you. If you think perhaps your PCG, preventive control governance mechanism, is perhaps in need of a little bit more oversight in terms of segregation of duties, you want to limit a few more folks from getting into different areas within your environment, we can help you because our tool set also has a platform built in for just managing segregation of duties. Now, most folks think, hey, data breach, oh, that doesn't happen to me. I've got a firewall, everything is well protected. It happens to other people. Equifax, man, they didn't patch their environment, so it happened to them. Well, it's not so much that, because a lot of data breaches do happen internally, and that's quite common. When you talk about data breaches, I may have access to some HR data which I'm not supposed to look at. And those type of things, with a clever methodology, can be instituted with relative ease. So we can help there. The next point is very important, and this is, again, I want to reiterate, this is where a lot of my friends and a lot of enterprise client sites, they sweat over this and they lose their sleep. Because when we talk about Chemlease, we'll go through, we'll assure, get the current footprint of your Chemlease, get the utilization of the Chemlease, tell you a clear path, and if you need to enhance, need to make any modifications, then also assess the impact in the new release in terms of the data structures. Will this Chemly work? Will my customization Monday morning go live? Is it going to be operational? And those are the type of things we can help you with. So in terms of any code that needs to be reworked in the new release, we'll have that assessment. Once the migration, which is a standard process in Oracle, Chemlease are migrated, we'll give you a full reconciliation report, which is available also for download.
Sid, if I could interact in between.
Sure, Vinu.
I got some questions coming on the customization. Would you mind taking it right now, or can we reserve it for the end of the one? Maybe next couple
Vinu,
of minutes.
I really appreciate it. I'm sure there's a lot of questions around this. Let me bust through this next couple minutes and then try to close it. Then we can take the questions. Would that
Sure,
work?
sure. Yeah, should be fine, sir. Thank you.
Wonderful. Thank you. So the next part is, and this is very important, because anytime you do a project, whether it's a small project, it's rolling out Microsoft 365. In this case, you're talking a large enterprise, and you go into the next release of Oracle, you go into 12.2. There's a lot of excitement. People are waiting for this, but you want to be smart about it. You want to make sure that what we went out and what we said we're going to do, basically, our IT teams on all sides, we should be able to validate. So here's where we can give you some really key indicators of the validation process, because as you all, I'm sure, have done multiple upgrades for different softwares, typically all this stuff is done manually. What we have built with our platform is an automated process. So even if you're looking at, for example, setup comparison, you just want to assure there's a great straight path for taking the setups from 12.1.3 to 12.2.x. But if you just want to validate, see all the setups are there, yes, you can. If you want to validate and make sure from a reconciliation perspective that your master transactional data is there, you can do that too. You can put a lot of governance in place. And the nice thing is, we can even do functional testing for you. By that, I mean, if you want to go and test, example, a process flow, order to cash, procure to pay, we can run that with automated bots. And what you get at the end of it, you get verification within the tool set, and then you get a TE40 report saying, yes, I did this, everything matches. And I'll show you a little quick demo here on that, just to get a feel for it. Here's a very brief overview. We got a lot of different types of bots, whether it's setup related, QA related, just business process automation related. And all these things are driven by our templates. So basically by our flows, the process flows that we built over the years that drive the bots automatically. So being cautious of time, I'm going to bust through this very quickly. The first part on this demo is talking about setup migration. And I know setup migration perhaps is not part of an upgrade path into Oracle 12.2, but this is very important from a different aspect, even from the aspect of managing your Oracle release management. You may be doing it on a monthly basis, quarterly basis, or you may be rolling out, for example, you have a legal entity 1 in China, and you want to make a legal entity 2 again in China, but with slight modification on the tax code. And you're doing GL setups, you pull them out, you make the modification, transformation is done, then you move it. So this all can be managed and leveraged through the tool fairly easily. And I want to quickly just fast forward and show you something. See right here, as you can see, this shows you source instance, R12.1.3, target 12.2.4. So we can go across instances and match setups. And even if you wanted to take up some Delta setups from the source and move it to the target with relative ease, literally with the click of a few buttons, you can move them. So your time to go to production is enhanced by leaps and bounds. So another thing I want to quickly show, and I know we're a little short on time, this is basically an example of a bot that's comparing an R12, matching the invoice to a PO. And let me just run through this. I'll drag it so you get a visual idea. Then of course we'll be happy to do in-depth demos for you one-on-one. I just got to be respectful of your time here. So once we run the process flow, it's set up, it's executed, and then it's just going to run. It's going to go through like you go through the manual process, except the process is kicked in by this process flow that's managed by the bot. And see, you would have manually gone into Oracle EBS, you would have looked at it. Somebody would have physically sat there, validated all this information. Now the bot was able to do it. So this is something that saves you a lot of time. So if you wanted to say, hey, I want to take 20% of my processes and I want to just do random checks on it, just to make sure, like statistically, it's all sound, everything's good. So we're all happy with the sign off and the audit process. We can help you through that process. So in closing, what I want to mention to you is a philosophy that is covering end-to-end migration from your release, which is the current release, which is going off support into 12.2. But the things we specifically pay attention to is your data volumes, if there's a need to archive, purge the data, what is the quality of the data? Perhaps we should look at it, clean it. Most important, and again, I like to stress Chemly remediation. So the Chemlys, the customizations you have in your current version, they are the ones that cause sleepless nights. So I know you probably think I'm a broken record, but trust me, because I've just had a lot of bad scenarios with this. So I'm kind of biased toward it. And then of course, setup migrations, we can help you, and then the validation process. Another area where looking at this holistic approach, basically you'll save costs and we can help you reduce your timelines. So even if you're not looking for a full-blown R12.2 migration at this point in time, or perhaps you're initially just scratching the surface, thinking about and pre-planning, give us a call. Even if it's a subset of this, we'd love to do a free assessment with you. We'll get on a call with you, take a little bit of your time and your team's time, and come up with an assessment. So having said that, let me ask my good friend Vinu. I think Vinu, I hope and assume you probably got some good questions.
Yeah, Sid. I think we should be apologizing for the audience because we just crossed 2 minutes over, but not more than a couple of questions. We'll handle it right now, and the rest we'll always definitely answer through an email. So let me get you the first question. So my business has a lot of customization and a bolt-on in my current environment. What are my options? Can I request Austin to handle these questions?
Absolutely, Austin. You've got a lot of
Okay.
experience. Please share it with us.
Oh, this is one of those keep you awake at night scenarios, I think. So the question definitely is point on. So let's first kind of define a bolt-on, and then we can kind of go from there. So bolt-on kind of is a parallel system running tightly integrated into Oracle for a business function that probably didn't work. We see a lot of this, especially in the highly industrialized verticals. We see functionality around that. And also for shipping. There was a lot of, when 12.1.3 went out, people were really looking to improve shipping, and there are other many areas too, but they created customizations which were essentially handled outside of the system and then brought back in. So for those kinds of bolt-ons, I would say that's the nightmare scenario, right? You flip it on, you're trying to upgrade, you can't upgrade, and you want to know that Monday morning when you go live, how does that work? So our approach is once we do that assessment, we can kind of figure out really does this need to remain as a bolt-on? And assuming that the answer is yes, for some of them they are, you have a couple of options. One is to look into a PaaS solution for Oracle, do the customization and use integrated cloud services to bring it all back in. Another option, which is what the ChainSys is alternative to that, is you can think about our PaaS solution, which is a configurable front-end user interface, and then you can, without any coding, you just configure the functionality of your application screens, and then you can do all of that on the cloud, and then tightly integrate that into Oracle, so that Oracle EBS, so that when you perform your upgrades, this is outside of that. This doesn't have any impact. And when you eventually, should you want to move to Oracle Cloud in whether it's 2022 or 2032, right, you'll be ready to go. So that's one option. The other one is the customizations, and that's a big gray area. For some folks, it's adding a personalization. It's your reports that you may have thousands of reports that you've set up, and also form extensions. We see a lot of form extensions, which maybe today can be done through personalization, and even customizations, which were done early on, can be made into an extension. So we have a solution to help to do that. The idea being is we de-scope customizations. The more customizations you remove out of your system, the better your upgrade is going to be. Now, how do we get there? You got to do the assessment. So I think Sid pointed out there, if we can help you, we can give you the complexity of what is your environment today. How much of it is customization? And even more importantly is how much of it is not even being used. We see that often as well. So I know I'm dragging out the time a little bit, but what I'm trying to put forward here is it may not be as bad as you're saying. The good assessment can probably help you to figure out what you have today, and then we can then give you very good options of how you can move forward. And I think we didn't get to it, but in the demo, it has really nice UIs and dashboards to share with you all of the stuff, down to the how much historical data is in my system at the module level. So at that level, we have the solution ready. So hopefully that kind of gave some background. And to the person who asked this question, please reach out to us. We're happy to help you out on that. So back to you, Vinod.
Thanks, Austin. I think you touched upon the free assessment part, which is still on the screen. Guys, please do reach us. We'll happy to help you. And there's one more question. We'll take it, Austin, and then we'll wind up. This is on the data quality side, or the cleanup side. Do I do cleanup before or after upgrading?
Oh man, okay. This is definitely a yes question, a yes answer. You got to do both. So let me reiterate the words of my old friend and mentor Raymond Ray. It's get clean, stay clean, right? So to get clean, you got to do it now. Stay clean is you want to use the rules that you establish for get clean afterwards. But let's break that apart, right? So we see many customers who are wanting to upgrade, but their customer and vendor master, item master, it's just full of duplicates. So that's one area that you should think about, where you would save a lot of headache if you do it now rather than later. So that's kind of like a pro and a con. And we fit that into the pre-upgrade activities bucket. Now, if you can't do your items, that's understandable, but definitely you should think about your customer and vendor. That's a really good place to start. And another type of cleanup, this is kind of loosely defining cleanup, is let's say you've been on 12.1.3 for a long time, and you've grown and expanded, and the number one ask we have is, can you change the chart of accounts during this upgrade? So what you can do is make all those changes into your existing environment today, and your business can then operate and run its normal process testing, all that good stuff, and then you can do the patch upgrade. So that's a frequent ask, is a chart of accounts, sometimes even structural changes to your organization, your legal entities, all of those things can be done. And then you can take care of the patching after that. So I would leave you with the thought that we did this for a very large travel company, and we did help them to do their customer data cleanup. That was a very critical aspect thing for them. So the takeaway from this would be get clean, stay clean, right? But overall, if you take the real reason for all of this, if you have all of this clean data, your customer data, your vendor data, all your transactions, right, your sales orders, and all your AR, everything is clean. If you have good clean data, now you can start to trust your data in your new system. So that's really going to be important, both for the business and the stakeholders, because they're going to want to pull out a report out of the new system to see if it's actually accurate. So if you do that now and get clean, that data-driven concept is going to be available for you when you upgrade. Back to you, Vinod.
Yeah. Hey, thank you so much, Austin. That's a really interesting answer. People would like it. I think we could be closing this. We are almost 8 minutes past 3. So let's get concluded. And rest of the questions, what we got, we'll definitely respond through an email. Guys, I would request Sid and Austin, I need your help to answer those questions or an email. With
Absolutely,
that,
Vinu.
sure. With that, we can conclude our session today. Thank you so much for your wonderful time, and it was really, really interesting, and it was I mean, informative of what you got today. And definitely, it is recorded, and we're going to share that recording with you. Please listen that back to you, and you can also share it back with your team. And you can also have any questions if you have. Please feel free to write us, and that will be my email ID is vinod@changes.com. Definitely, we could definitely help you. Oh, that's there, the listed here. We'll be available to get you a 30-minute slot to walk you through our process and get all your questions answered in more detail. So thanks again for your time. Thanks, Austin and Sid, for your presence here. So we really appreciate your time and hope you had a good session. Everyone, stay safe and good for another session coming up. Thank you so much.